Hey, it's Kimmy Searches. Long time no see. I haven't been here for like a month. Not like anyone has noticed, but let's just jump right back into the books. So I picked this book up in February. It was a book of the month book a while back, but they had it for like $10, so I got it. Um, it is a story about Evelyn Hugo, who was a superstar in Hollywood's like golden era, and now she's an older woman and she has selected a no name journalist to tell her life story, something the world has been dying to hear. But there's more that connects the two than they originally think, and there's more to Evelyn Hugo than meets the eye. This was a super fun story about like a soap opera like journey of Evelyn Hugo. It's told in a really interesting way. Part of the story is from the journalist's point of view. Her name is Monique. So part of it is about Monique talking to Evelyn, and the majority of the story is Evelyn's point of view while she's telling Monique about her life. And it's like in real time almost. So it's about her whole life and it's from Evelyn's point of view. There are also a few like tabloid articles and other like magazine articles scattered throughout the book to add to the story, and I thought that was really fun. That really broke up the narration very well, I think, and it made it really fun. This was a super fast read. I read it in like 2 days maybe. I could have read it in one, but I read it in two. And it really reads like a dramatic soap opera. So if you're really into like lovers quarrels and dramatic romance and soap operas, you'll really like this book. It's got all of that kind of stuff in it, and it is really fun. It was like a guilty pleasure read almost because it was so like over the top dramatic, but it was fun. It was really fun. But if you're looking for a more serious read and if you don't like all of the drama, then you won't like this book, so skip it. But like I said, it's super entertaining. It's a really fun read. I really enjoyed all the different types of love that they showcase in this, because it's not just her romantic love between Evelyn and her 7 different husbands. It's about all her relationships. Her relationships with her parents, her relationships with her friends, her husbands obviously, her relationships with as a professional, as an actress, and it's super interesting. Her relationship with Monique, who is a complete stranger and then becomes a friend. It's really interesting. I really like it. And it's really nice because not all of the definitions of love are like particularly healthy. And I can't say that you support every single person that she loves and her relationship with them. But it's really cool to see them all showcased and how different people love each other and how different people define their love for each other and what people decide is okay in certain relationships and what is not. It's just very interesting. It's a really good examination of that as a topic. So I really liked that. I thought that made this book really interesting and worth reading for that alone. But with that said, like I also just said, not every relationship is a fantastic relationship just because there claims to be like a love between people doesn't mean that it's a good relationship. Case in point being Evelyn and Celia St. James. Celia St. James is a rival actress for Evelyn, and they have like a roller coaster relationship. One moment they're like completely inseparable, best of friends, and then the next moment they are not speaking to each other for like 5 years or something ridiculous. And they're super toxic. And a lot of this book is about the two of them and how they interact with each other and all of that. And it's just they're not very good for one another. They're both pretty selfish. So it doesn't matter at what point their relationship is at. It's just not very good overall, in my opinion. I think that they either should have had a serious conversation or just not talk to each other like ever. if I had been friends with either one of them, it definitely would have been one of those friendships where I'm like, what are you doing, buddy? Like, either drop that or, sit down and have a really good conversation with them, because whatever y'all are doing is not working right now. So that's kind of, and that would be the friends where they ignore you and they're like, oh, I totally get it. Well, everything you're saying makes sense. And then they don't take your advice. That would be what's happening here. So if that gets under your skin, you're not going to like that either. And I just didn't like that as much. I thought it was aggravating, and I thought it was realistic, because there are lots of people who have relationships like that, be it with friends or romantic partners or whatever, but it's never that fun, and it's not something super nice to read about. It's not something super fun to read about. It's dramatic, and it gave the story a lot to work with, and I did like that, but it's just, a little annoying at times, especially because as an outsider reading into it, you can really see all the things that they should have done differently. But again, it's one of those things where people do different things that they think is for the benefit of a relationship, and so this is one of those things where they both deal with things differently for the sake of their love for one another and for the sake of their relationship, and sometimes it works and sometimes it really doesn't work, and they have a huge fight about it. Human nature. So there's that. Other than that, the only other thing that I didn't love was Monique, the journalist. I thought she was unbelievable and super boring. She doesn't have a huge presence in the book. She's kind of like a minor character, even though it's kind of about her. But I just think that she's super annoying. She has this whole other thing going on with her husband, which is like her emotional connection to Evelyn Hugo. Like she takes a lot from Evelyn, and she learned lessons from Evelyn and everything. But I don't care about her relationship like at all. So when she leaves Evelyn's house and she goes home and she has to deal with her own relationships, and she's trying to like relate it back to how Evelyn dealt with things, I really don't care about it. I don't care what happens to her. I don't care about anything that happens to her. I don't feel any connection with her at all. I don't feel, sympathetic towards her really for anything. I don't really care about her. The like big twist that connects her and Evelyn is kind of like way out in left field, so it didn't feel to me like a huge revelation. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, sure. And then they tried to make like a whole big thing about it, where like Monique is like really strongly affected by it, and that just seems also unbelievable. And I just like, it just seemed really strange. Like they could have left that whole subplot out of the book, and I think it would have been better. Honestly, I think it would have been better without the subplot of Monique. It's just, to me, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, and it doesn't matter that much. So when they try to make a big deal out of it, I was just kind of, I was really disconnected from it because I didn't care at all about that or about Monique. So, meh. That part of the story was not as fun. The rest of it was super fun, though. I would like to add that it's got a great lesson here that my mom taught me a long time ago. It was, you're not done until you're done. I don't know if anything I'm about to say is going to make sense, but it was a really strong lesson for me, and it was like, you're not through with your relationship with someone until you're like finally, like actually, like you can say that you're through with it, but that doesn't mean that you're actually done. So, and that happens a lot with Evelyn. She, a relationship is ended for her, and then she's like, I'm a free woman now. I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to chase my dreams. And that's not necessarily the case. She's sometimes still hung up on things until the day when she finally is at a place where she can say, I let that go. I don't care about it anymore. I'm at a place where that doesn't affect me anymore. And I think that's a really good lesson for people. And it's a difficult one to learn, and you kind of don't understand it until you're there yourself. And I don't know if anything I just said makes any sense, but I really liked seeing that in this book, and I really liked seeing Evelyn go through it because I don't know, I have sympathy for that. I can connect to that a lot. And I enjoyed seeing her go through that and show us kind of how to go through that. So I really like that. Another thing I'd like to add might be kind of spoilery, so skip to the next book if you don't want to hear it, but a lot of people think that Harry, one of Evelyn's husbands and one of her very good friends, is her true love, and I disagree. Evelyn and Harry have a very special relationship. They're incredible friends, and I think that's where it stops. Harry is clearly not romantically interested in Evelyn, and maybe it depends on your definition of true love. Because to me, when I was reading other people's comments about that, they were saying it in a way that suggested a romantic sense of true love, and I disagree. I've dated people that I wasn't romantically interested enough, and it ends very poorly, and that's not like a good definition of love, even though we were amazing friends from the start. So just because Evelyn and Harry have an incredible friendship does not mean that they have a true love. Was Harry probably the best relationship she ever had in her life? Probably. He was one of the only ones who like genuinely cared about her enough to like call her out, enough to really try to help her. You know, he was really there for Evelyn, but would I call him her true love? No. Her greatest relationship she ever had? Probably, but in Evelyn's eyes, she didn't value that as much as the greatest relationship she had romantically. And I'll not give that away, but I don't think Harry is her true love in a romantic sense, the way a lot of people seem to think it is. So that's my opinion on that. This book got 4 stars because I really enjoyed it as a guilty pleasure book. So on to the next. So the next book on my list is Heart's Heritage by Ramona K. Cecil. This book was given to me by my grandmother. She knows that I collect books and that I really like history books, so she gave me this one. Why not? She really likes reading like romance novels, so I thought I would read this one. I was hoping it was going to be super funny, but we'll get into that. So this book is about a woman named Annie who lives on the American frontier. She has recently been not only widowed but also orphaned. She's like somewhere between 16 and 18, I don't quite recall, but her father dies and she ends up marrying her father's best friend, and then he dies and they both leave her all of their property, but they also leave some property to her husband's kinsman, Brock. And so he shows up on her doorstep. They immediately have some conflicting emotions about each other and some conflicting ideas about the property, the land that they are both given. And they have to work through these emotions and ideas while combating issues from literally every angle of the American frontier. Everything from like struggle with crops as farmers to like the military is coming and causing issues to like a Native American attacks to like what will the town think, like everything that could go wrong, sperm lovers, like everything that could go wrong, like something happens with it in this book. And it's super predictable, but not in a bad way. I was expecting this book to be like really poorly written and really poorly researched, but surprisingly enough, it was not. Like, there were a few things that I questioned in this book, but for the most part, it seemed like startlingly accurate for the time period. I was really expecting like egregious mistakes that I was going to be able to really laugh at because they were so bad, but I didn't really get that. I was a little disappointed, to be honest, because I was really waiting for those big mistakes because I wanted to make fun of them. But it was actually pretty well done. It's super predictable. It's a Christian romance novel, so you know exactly what's going to happen. But it's not poorly written still. It's super cheesy and over the top, and I didn't really enjoy that. But that's because I don't enjoy that type of writing, that type of literature. But if I was really into Christian romance novels or historical romance novels, I think this would be a really good one to check out. I am personally not interested in that, and I was just hoping it was badly written, like I said, so I can make fun of it. And I found myself not laughing very much. It was, despite the fact that it was predictable, it was still interesting enough and written well enough to not be such a bad thing. There were parts of it where you sit there and you're like, oh, come on, like that's not really how it would work. But they're minor enough incidents that it doesn't really affect the rest of the book as a whole. So there's that. It was decently researched. The things that I really didn't like about this book were the lines between the Christian novel and the romance novel. It's kind of a thin line, and it's a little blurred, and you can really tell in this book. There were parts where I was wondering if any real human beings would actually be thinking about the Bible during those times, but maybe so. I don't know. I'm not super religious, so I don't know if maybe that's just really how people are or were for the time period, perhaps. It was a little much for me, but I assume that anyone picking up this book would really want to see strong Christian messages in it, and I think they do that pretty well. There's a few things in it where it's like, it feels kind of like you have to either choose, Christian novel or romance novel, and they try to do both, and it feels just a little skewed to me, but as someone who's not highly interested in either one of those topics, I'm not sure if maybe that was just me or not. If I would love to hear from someone who is interested in both of those things what they think about it. But it just seemed just a little odd to me. The other thing I didn't like was Annie as a character. They try to make her the small but fierce female character, and she just comes across as super annoying. She's supposed to be like strong-willed, even though she's this dainty little woman, and I think she just comes off as super irritating, and I don't like her. But aside from that, her father was a French fur trapper, and her mother was an Irish woman, which I thought was strange because I never got any undertones of anything Irish in this entire book until like almost the end when she talks about her mother. And I was just surprised. Annie does speak French, though. Not well. Well, she's fluent in French. I don't think it's written very well. You know those authors where they clearly have never heard someone speak a second language before? That's kind of how this feels like. And it's really weird because she has other characters that don't speak English. It's the American frontier. A lot of people are immigrants from Europe, and she does it well enough with other characters. Toward the end, there's a German couple where the man says something and then he forgets an English word, and so he's like floundering in German, and then the other person like supplies the word, and like it makes sense. It seems like something that would really happen. For some reason, this isn't the case with Annie. Annie, a lot of the times, will say something in French and then immediately translate it into English. And it's not like she forgets how to say it in English, so she says it in French first. Like, it feels like the whole time she knew how to say it in English, and she knows that her friends don't speak French. She just says it in French and then says it in English. And she did, like, it's not just sometimes, like, she does that a lot in a way that seems unrealistic to me. I don't know. I didn't like that. I thought that was really weird and annoying. And there are parts of it, too, that are just left untranslated. and I thought that was very annoying and weird. It's just, that part's not well done. I don't like that at all. The rest of it is fine though, excuse me. um, so it wasn't too poorly written, but between like the cheesiness and Annie's annoying character and the like weird mixed Christian romance messages, I didn't like this book. I gave it 2 stars. Like I said, if you're in the very niche audience of Christian romance readers, I think you'll really, really like this book. Literally everyone else will hate it. Even if you want to read it as a joke, it wasn't that funny to me. I didn't find a lot of things to laugh about, and I can laugh about almost anything. So I gave this one 2 stars. But if you're into that really niche market, I think Heartsong Presents is the company name for this book. And they seem like they do a really good job, especially Ramona Cecil. Like, she knows what she's doing, I guess, with the romantic Christian novels. So if you're into that, check it out. If not, like me, you just heard the review of it. I think that's good. You're done. You don't need any more. So the next book that I picked was The Age of Light by Whitney Sharer, I don't know, I'm sorry. This was a Book of the Month book for February. It's about the famous World War II photographer Lee Miller and her relationship with surrealist artist Man Ray. This is a historical fiction novel. Whitney Sharer does have a list of other books that she read to research these characters, but I have not read any. They all seem very interesting, but I'm going to tell you right now, while I say that, I'm not actually going to go looking for them because I'm too lazy. But they did seem really interesting and very cool, and in a perfect world, I would go read them, but I'm not going to. So I'm not sure how accurate the information in this book is to their real lives. They were real people. This is a historical fiction. She does claim that she's done a lot of research about them, and she's kind of like made her own persona for them. But as far as the details go, I'm not certain what's completely accurate and what's more fictitious. So I apologize if you know something is inaccurate in here and I don't, let me know. But otherwise, I guess let me tell you about what I do know, which is this book that I just read. I really enjoyed it because, well, it starts out with Lee Miller. She started out as a model for Vogue, and then she decided she wanted to be an artist instead of a model. So she moves to Paris, and she ends up becoming a photographer, or training as a photographer with the already established photographer Man Ray. Man Ray, if you haven't looked him up, he did some really weird surrealist art, and he was a well-known photographer at the time. So she ends up studying with him and then being in a romantic relationship with him for like 10 years-ish, I think. And then she breaks up with him and they move on, and she ends up becoming a World War II photographer, a war correspondent for Vogue, which is apparently a thing. So after that, I'm not clear on what she does. She keeps writing for Vogue, and for part of this story, she's an older woman, and it's not really clear on what her job is. She writes for Vogue still, and maybe does photography for them, but I'm not really sure what she really does after World War II. So those are kind of the only things that you really know about her life just based on this book alone. And I didn't do any research for it. I did like minimal amounts of research just to see what some of the weird pictures they took were. So I apologize for not having all the answers, but there you go. I really enjoyed the female perspective here. The story is told from Lee Miller's point of view as a young woman trying to become an artist on her own. I think it's super interesting. I think it's super relatable. She really struggles like coming out of the shadow of Man Ray, and I like that. I like the way it's told because you really can connect with that as another young woman who is sometimes not taken seriously, either because I'm young or because I am a woman or whatever. I'm just not always taken seriously or as an authority figure in things, and it's really nice to see that in characters like this. Like she's a strong lady, she knows what she's about, she's an artist. She just can't really go out and do things on her own without people asking her about Man Ray. And it's a little frustrating for her, and it's harder for her to be taken seriously as an artist because of that. And I just really like it. I think it's well done, and it's not too, like, it's very easy to slip into like a perspective of like a victim or something with that, and it really doesn't. I think it's been a little it's been like a month since I read this, so if there's like some glaring thing that I'm completely missing, then I'm sorry, but I thought it was well done. I also really enjoyed the writing style in this. I thought it was pretty well done. I had a good time reading this. I think this was a very interesting, fun book. Again, it was like a super dramatic relationship thing. It was February. I was picking like love books for February, and then I never told you about them, so here we are in April. But whatever. I thought this was a fun read. The things I didn't like about it was partially with the storyline, it was a little disconnected. So the majority of the book is about Lee Miller telling her own story about when she was a young woman, but every now and then there'll just be like randomly tossed in a couple of pages about her time in World War II, and they're like completely disconnected from the main story. So it's not like she sees something in a wreckage or whatever from World War II where she picks it up and says, oh, this reminds me of my time in Paris. It's just like totally random, not connected to the main story at all, or particularly important to the main story. And so I was thinking by the end of the book, we're going to get to see like her life up to World War II, and then like the little snippets will all fall into place and it'll make sense. That doesn't happen. It stops telling her story like a couple of years before World War II starts. And and it's also not her dealing with like the rise of the Nazi Party or anything. It just stops with her regular everyday life, and then it jumps to the end of the book, which is again about her life as an older woman. So that just seems really like disconnected to me, and I'm not sure why the author did it that way, because it makes her seem like two completely different people. In the majority of the story, she's like this young woman who's full of love and hope and aspirations, and she's got her whole life ahead of her. And then in the sections that are about her time during the war, she's like this woman full of bitterness and hatred, and like not at all the woman that you've been reading about this whole time. So it was really difficult for me to like put those together, and I'm not sure why the author did it that way. I'm not sure if it was supposed to be like super disconnected so you get like to see how war changed her, or I don't know. I'm not really sure what the point of that was, so I'm not sure what I'm supposed to really take away from it. And that may have been a stylistic choice as well, but it was just really weird to me, and it made it difficult to really like continue reading it, because I would just stop and be like, what is going on? Why are we talking about that now with no context, no connection or anything? Like, I'm just not sure what the author wanted us to think about that. I don't know if that makes sense. Aside from that, the characters, they're a little clingy. They're like almost borderline abusive to one another. They're very selfish. They're very almost cruel to each other sometimes, and I don't know how accurate that is to the real life people, but that's not always something people enjoy reading about. Like I said, this is a super dramatic like relationship romance read. So if you're interested in the artists of Paris during like the golden years or whatever, I guess this is the 30s. It wasn't quite the golden years, but it was kind of in that same genre almost. I know there's books about like Ernest Hemingway's wife and all of that, and like I'm sure Zelda Fitzgerald, Scott Fitzgerald's wife or whatever. If you're into that kind of thing, you'll like this one. Also, if you like very dramatic relationships, you'll like this one. If you're not into that, you won't like this. And I think if you are into the artists of Paris and the artist movement in Paris in like the 20s and 30s, but not into dramatic relationships, skip this one. You're just better off skipping it. You're not gonna like take away anything super great from it. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I'm not sure what I rounded it to on Goodreads, but it was a fun read. It was entertaining. It felt meaningful, and I was interested in Lee Miller and her life and what she did with that afterwards. I just don't have the willpower or the drive to pursue that. So maybe keep that in mind. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. The last book that I read in February was The Winter Sister by Megan Collins. This was another one of those Book of the Month subscription books. It's a mystery book about a woman named Sylvie who is not excited to return home to take care of her very ill mother, with whom she does not have a solid relationship since the death of her sister nearly 2 decades ago. However, when family secrets begin to unravel, Sylvie is about to reopen this cold case. So the plot of this book is genuinely really interesting. It's a little predictable, but half the fun of mystery novels is seeing how the characters figure things out. And this one's really fun because it's Sylvie, the sister, solves the case of the murder, and she uncovers all the secrets herself. So it's not like a buddy cop story. It's not like a investigator solves everything. It's just some woman solves a case. And so it's a little predictable, like I said, but it's still enjoyable to read. I also read this one in like 2 days or something. It very easily could have done it in a single day, but it's really interesting. It's really good. The thing that I have on here on my pros and cons list is that the characters are kind of shitty. And it's really nice to see, because a lot of times you have like those perfect characters and like they can do no wrong and they're good at everything, and it's really tiring to see those characters over and over again. And in this book you get characters with like real flaws, and you get characters who are actually just kind of bad people, or characters who are struggling with things and they're not nice when they're struggling with things. So on one hand, it's nice to see that. It's like a refreshing change. On the other hand, you do have to read about annoying and shitty characters. Some of them learn from their experiences. Some of them don't. Not all of them are very like reflective of themselves and how they can improve themselves, or maybe what they're doing wrong. And that's because it's not like so one or the other. Like sometimes they learn things, sometimes they don't. On one hand, it's nice because that's how real people work. You can self-reflect as much as you like, but that doesn't mean that you're going to learn how to fix every annoying quality about yourself. And that's realistic, so that's nice. But on the other hand, is that what people want to read about all the time? Maybe. Sometimes, but not everybody. So if you're not into like real, like flawed, annoying characters, you're gonna hate this book. But otherwise, it's nice because they feel more like real people that you might actually know, real people that you might actually see on like a crime show. So if you really like Dateline and Forensic Files and stuff, I think you'll like this book. If you're looking for something that's actually going to stump you, skip this one. You're not going to like it. I also wanted to mention, I picked up this book because the sister's name, so Sylvie is the main one who is living. The sister who was murdered is named Persephone. And so I picked up that book because I thought they were going to make some kind of connection with the myths of Persephone, and I was really interested in that. And they did. They tried. Towards the end, they make some efforts to connect Persephone's name to the myths, and it just seems a bit of a stretch to me. It's a little forced. I kind of wish they would have just skipped that and had the mom be like, "Oh, I just thought that was a super pretty name." I don't really like the way they did it. I'm not sure if that's just me or if that's like an actual flaw with the book that most people would agree with. I can't really decide. And I can't decide if I actually like it because the mother named her, and the mother is the one who's like has severe issues with having relationships with people after her daughter died. So I'm not sure if like I like it because it shows like an aspect of her personality, or if I hate it just because it seems like it's not very well thought out. I don't know. But there's that. So if you're looking for like a recreation of the Persephone mythology, like this isn't it. That's what I was hoping for, and I didn't get what I wanted. I still enjoyed it though because like I said, it was super fast and a fun read. I really liked them solving the mystery together. I gave it 3 stars though because I liked it, but I didn't really like it. It's not the best mystery book I've ever read. It's not even my favorite book that I read in February. So, nah, it's fun. If you just want to read a super fast mystery book, this is a great choice for that. Like if I was on a plane or something, I would read this book. If I had to like wait in a office for a long time, I would read this book. It's a fun book to read like on a trip or something. Well, you don't have anything else to read. I think this one's good. If you have other choices, if you have a lot of other mystery choices that you're gonna like, I would say pick that one maybe. But otherwise, this one was pretty fun. It's pretty good. I enjoyed my February reads for the most part, and I hope you also enjoyed hearing about them a month late. I apologize, sort of, to the one person watching. Hi, Acacia. Nice to see you again. Anyway, I will be back hopefully soon with my March reads, which were not many. So, until then, see ya.